What I do now is, and again, don't get me wrong, I have my bad days. I have my off days. We all do. We're human, right? But on those days, I choose to do something that will bring me up, whether it's reading a book or reading a quote or reading something, finding something positive to read. Because I'm choosing to be better in life, and I choose happiness. I choose drama-free life. I want a drama-free life. Oh my gosh, Colorado makes me feel like it's drama-free life because Colorado is just amazing.
And welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. In this episode, we're going to be dealing with Shan'ann Watts' psychology. Certainly an area I haven't dealt with too much. I've certainly dealt with the family dynamics, but virtually everyone has sort of dealt with Chris Watts basically just as a narcissist, so very shallow study there, and then also Nicole Kessinger basically just as some kind of dark mistress, someone with some kind of occult leanings or something. What we want to do in this episode is go into Shan'ann Watts' psychology, not very deeply, but certainly just acknowledging it and sort of touching on it and seeing where that leads us. Before we get there, please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started.
I choose happiness. I choose drama-free life. I want a drama-free life. Oh my gosh, Colorado makes me feel like it's drama-free life because Colorado is just amazing.
Incredibly, when I posted that snippet on Instagram, it's been viewed 35,000 times, and when I think of Shan'ann, that's what I think of. I think of that moment, because it speaks volumes. It's a Saturday morning, and it's one of the few occasions where we sort of see the whole family sort of accounted for and in kind of a relaxed setting. And so we see Shan'ann on the couch with Cece kind of on her lap, but sort of jumping off and running about to her father and her sister, who are sitting on the floor beside the front door, kind of with their backs to her. And she's doing a Thrive spiel. She's wearing a Thrive t-shirt, and this is really a promotion for Thrive, this little half-hour spiel. The description under the Facebook post is Saturdays with Lavelle, #MyLVLife. The post itself was dated May 5th, so very early, very close to the time that she found out she was pregnant. She announced her pregnancy on June 11th, but it's likely that she found out in early May. Interestingly, the original video has been viewed 208,000 times. That may sound like a lot, but if you look at some of the videos that are out there, there's some videos dealing with the, say, the narcissism of one or the other, viewed even more, over 250,000 times. And so, it's in a way disappointing because this is the original subject matter. This is nothing is going to tell you more about the Watts family, the people, than them themselves, than seeing them themselves. And so that's also why I want to sort of bring you guys back to this original content. Have Shan'ann's words speak to you, and hopefully we can listen to them with new ears, new hearts, and maybe even a bit of a change of mind. It's impossible not to be subjective about this, and I don't like being subjective about it because it's sort of so what if that's how this makes you feel or whatever. But I am going to share my subjective feeling. I'm reluctant to do it because I've been criticized a lot for being unsympathetic to Shan'ann and being sort of I guess allied with the Watts family or something. That's not true. I'm not allied with anyone, and I'm not allied with Shan'ann either. I'm compassionate towards all victims of true crime, and um, I do have to admit to a feeling of conflict with Shan'ann. I see an attractive woman. When I say attractive, I mean she's there are pictures of her where she looks stunning. There are certainly a lot of pictures of her where she looks more attractive than Nicole Kessinger. But having said that, in this video you see a side to Shan'ann that, or I see a side to Shan'ann that is for me quite tragic. She's doing a promotional video here, and it seems quite sad. She seems to be trying to convey to her community about how happy she is and how happy her family is, and she kind of seems quite tearful. I mean, she might be smiling at moments, but she seems really quite fragile. And if you just take that whole half-hour spiel and you just look at it on its own merits, you have Shan'ann sitting on the couch, and the children sort of are with her, with their father, sort of running away from her. Sometimes, Cece coming back. She actually calls out to Bella a couple of times. Bella doesn't really respond. Shan'ann sort of trying to do this Thrive spiel, trying to tell everyone that her life's perfect and that her family is very happy and that she's very, she's thriving in Colorado. The children are sort of making a noise while this is going on, and you can see it sort of upsetting her. She does ask Bella to sort of, keep it down. As for her husband, he's kind of got his back to her most of the time. You don't see him virtually at all addressing the camera, smiling to the camera, saying anything positive to the camera, reinforcing what Shan'ann's saying, adding how great it is on a Saturday in Colorado. The only time he really says something, which is also quite interesting, is when she talks about, and bear in mind this is in early May, she talks about going on this trip that she's already planned at the beginning of the year, and she already knows the times and dates when they're going to be arriving back, and Chris Watts then queries it. He's surprised to know exactly when Shan'ann's getting back, so he's well aware of what her schedule is, and that, I think, plays an important part in the premeditation and also in the affair. In order to have the affair, he needs to be able to work around her schedule. And then, something like halfway through the spiel, Shan'ann, I think, just feels very disrupted by the noise, and she can't sort of control the family. And this is my personal perception. I could be wrong. My personal perception is she's trying to do this video. She's not really getting help from her children, which is somewhat understandable. But quite importantly, she's not really getting help from Chris. He's not it doesn't seem as though he's making any effort to control them and to, he knows, of course, that she's recording this live. He's not sort of conscientiously helping her. He's not helping to sort of manage the children and keep them from their loudness interrupting the thing. And so she eventually leaves the room, and my impression, and I could be wrong, but my impression when she does leave the room, you guys should watch it to make up your own minds, but my impression is that she seems quite stung and she seems quite upset by this, by him not playing ball, by him not helping her. And she then leaves the room, walks through the kitchen and goes outside and sits outside on the ground, sort of on the porch, and she sort of explains it to her viewers, saying that it's quite hot on that day, and it was May, and she's sitting there in a t-shirt, and then when she's sort of in that private space in terms of her family, away from Chris, she talks about I think even in that video she talks about him being the best thing that's ever happened to her, but while she's out there on the porch, she sort of has quite a vulnerable moment with the audience. She says she has her down moments, right? And to me, when she says that, she seems quite tearful. She seems to be acknowledging that she has had kind of struggles. She also talks about her health, and that does actually seem quite genuine. And this is where I'm a little bit critical of her, not necessarily of Shan'ann, but of the whole how does one deal with unhappiness, right? And Shanann's job is to guide people to happiness. She's selling the dream of thriving. She's selling the dream of being happy and having a happy family. That's what she's selling. And in this sort of moment, she's sort of revealing to me that there's something lacking there. And this was very early on, before we knew very much that was going on, before we knew the discovery. And what she says here is, when she's down, what she does, right? And that's something that's true of anybody. Anybody might feel down or depressed or having a setback. How do you deal with that sense of despair? What do you do? And if you listen to that video clip, especially the one I've put on Instagram, she sort of refers to reading something positive, reading this, reading that, reading a message, reading a quote. Everything is reading. All her sort of strategies for dealing with difficulty has to do with reading. And I'm a writer. I write books. One could argue that I should really like that I should think, well, if you're down, read a book. But I disagree. I think if you're down, of course you can read self-help books, but I'm saying that cannot be the full response. That can't be the full thing in your repertoire, how you deal with a setback. And when I look at that, I think a very good way to dealing with unhappiness is exercise. It's a way you can manage your moods. It's a way you can improve your self-esteem. It's a way that you can flush out stress. It's a way that you can strengthen your resilience and strengthen your psychology. And if there's one thing about Shan'ann that's very different from Chris Watts, he was a lot more physical in his work. He was a lot more physical in his he would exercise in the home and even go running with Nick Thayer. And one kind of got the impression that Shan'ann didn't do that, and also to an extent that she didn't exercise. I don't know what you guys think of that, whether she did. One could say that running the household was exercise enough, but another explanation for that could be that because she had lupus, exercise, sweating was uncomfortable. Maybe it led to inflammation. But one of the things of our society is, when we are not well, when we have a disease, when we're sick, it's not treated with things that make us healthy, such as exercise. I mean, exercise is one of the best ways of maintaining health. But our society is geared to saying, well, when you're sick, take a pill. When you're sick, read a book. It's never really about put an effort in and be disciplined and make an effort to sort things out in that way. And so I say this with sensitivity because it's not to say that Shan'ann, this is not to sort of blame her and say, well, there was a better way of doing it. Simply to say this is true for all people. And in terms of Thrive, Shan'ann was being challenged constantly to come up with authentic messages to her audience, to say, this is how you can be happy, this is how you can thrive. When you have a setback, this is how you can bounce back. And of course, what she's saying here has got incredible value, and it's got incredible import based on what was about to follow. Bear in mind, this was early May. She was about to fall pregnant, and then what would follow would be a 6-week affair that her husband was about to undertake. Now, look at it in that context. Chris Watts is spending a Saturday at home. Is he happy? Is she happy? Are they happy? Is the family happy? And then if you just jump through time to what happened on August 12th, August 13th, the answer is no. There was a lot of unhappiness. And so you can criticize me all you like. You can, point the finger at me and say, how dare you? But the fact is, this was a moment for Shan'ann to address questions of difficulty and questions of hardship and questions of conflict. And the question at the same time is, was this an effective strategy? Is reading a book an effective strategy? And I want to take it even further. At the zenith of their sort of argument, when Shan'ann arrived back from North Carolina after a week that she described as the worst week of her life, the first week of August, she then realized that there were serious problems, not only regarding Watts' feelings towards the baby, then at 15 weeks, but also towards her, and even to some extent towards the children. And her response to that, in a large part, was she ordered a book from Amazon for him and for herself. And it is very much like, in the same way Watts made a relationship video, and that tells us a lot about his attitude to relationships. Really informs us a lot about what he thought. This little clip here tells us a lot about Shanann's attitude to how to repair relationships, and that's exactly what she did. She ordered these books. She, I guess, read them and studied them. Nicole Atkinson was also reading a book about how to deal with difficulties. I think it was called Girl, Wash Your Face, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reading books, but that can't be all you do. You can't simply read a book and say, well, that's now addressed the situation. And we know what Chris Watts did. He received the book and he threw it in the trash, right? He needed something else. He needed a conversation where maybe he would have felt that he could trust her enough that she would respond in a way that would be something they could work together on, if that makes sense. Now, in fairness to Shan'ann, this is taking a single phrase, where she says, I want a drama-free life, completely out of context, and applying it back to her. Is it fair? Well, it's never fair to do that to anybody, to take one single sentence. But we're nevertheless doing it, and we're simply saying, where does this take us? So I'm not saying that this is the be-all, end-all, this is the final analysis. It's simply saying, if we take that statement, where does it take us, and where could it have taken Shan'ann? This idea of wanting a drama-free life. Again, we don't mean this in a nasty or victim-blaming way. We simply want to look at something she said on its own merits and with the benefit of hindsight. Again, it's not taking something she said and trying to twist it. It's taking her own words, and that's the best place to start. It's the best taking someone's own words and seeing how they color the contents of a case and of a crime, rather than other people putting their own words over it, right? We want to look at, as far as possible, what they say and what they feel and where they are in this story. So, first of all, it's likely Chris Watts also wanted a drama-free life, either as much as Shan'ann did or possibly even more. We even get the same sense that he wanted drama-free life with Kessinger. That when Nutgate happened, when Dieter went up the stairs and Kessinger saw the family photos and she realized what she was getting herself into, there was drama. And Watts described it as talking off a ledge, and it seems he was quite kind to her, and she was convinced by what he said. But one gets the sense with him that he wants things to be drama free, and if anything, his sermon on the porch is that it's a drama free discussion. It's very lacking in drama, and that's not what we mean by our things should be drama free. Certainly there should have been drama, there should have been tears, there should have been emotion, there should have been concern. When he acknowledged that they were dead, he should have grieved. There should have been uncontrollable tears, but he clearly resigned himself to what he was going to do. Again, going back to when Shan'ann recorded this, if you just think about where they were, there was plenty of drama on the horizon. Shan'ann was about to fall pregnant, or she was pregnant intentionally. Watts was part of that, and at the same time Watts was about to begin an affair, one that would have its own drama but would have apocalyptic consequences. Can you imagine if these people, all three of them, could have handled the drama better? Kissinger could have walked into the house, felt this dramatic swing, and said, "Look, I need to walk away from this. When it's all over, when you're not staying here, then let's pick it up. But I can't do this." Can you imagine if that's how she'd managed it? Can you imagine if Watts had seen the drama with her and said, "You know what, this isn't right. I need to sort things out"? Can you imagine if Shan'ann had noticed with that Watts was possibly having an affair? Instead of giving him a book, she could have not gone to Arizona and tried to sort things out. Things may not have worked out any better, but it's certainly another way that she may have responded. She at least could have been a protector for children. Again, it's no guarantee that he wouldn't have done it anyway. In any event, with these huge dramas waiting in the wings, it would be important to everyone's survival not to add more unnecessary drama to an already loaded situation. Even the financial storm brewing around them meant the odds of staying at an even keel were minimal. So there is a lesson in this. All extremely loaded situations are by default difficult to deal with effectively. In a circumstance where there's not one but three, and arguably more, devastating situations to deal with, a pregnancy, an affair, a second bankruptcy, it's possible to make this bad situation infinitely worse. And so my message to you is, whoever you are, wherever you are in your life, the lesson in terms of the Watts family is, in a way, they're in a very bad situation, but it can be made worse. And one of the ways that it can be made worse, for example, was Nutgate, a totally unnecessary explosion. You can argue that it was necessary, but in terms of the crime, you've got to say, did Nutgate help the crime happen? And you can say exactly the same about Dietergate. Did Dietergate help the crime happen? I don't know what your answer to that question is, but I would say in both cases, yes. If you took the drama of both of those things out, you're lowering the tension and you're lowering the urgency to take an extreme action, and murder is an extreme action. Bear in mind, in a premeditated scenario, and Watts has already alluded to this idea that he made attempts to, poison Shan'ann with oxy. When you make an attempt and it fails, you then have the option to not make another attempt, to say, well, I tried, I don't want to do this. In the Patrick Frazee case, there are apparently 4 moments where the mistress is asked if she would kill his fiancée, and she doesn't. She doesn't kill him, but she wipes up the scene. And that then raises another question. There's, at any one of those 4 occasions, couldn't she have gone to the police? But again, in a premeditated scenario, you say, do these dramas, when you're thinking of killing someone, do these dramas help the relationship, or do they hinder them? Do they help the crime on its way to where it wants to go, or do they hinder them? Just an open question. but it has to do with criminal psychology and not normal psychology. Now, whether we blame Shan'ann or Chris Watts for the pregnancy or the affair or their financial distress, I think what we can agree on is that all these issues were preventable in the first place. The pregnancy was preventable, the affair was preventable, financial distress was preventable. They were individually and collectively matters of choice, and yet these people elected to do all of them. These people, Shan'ann and Chris, elected to become pregnant again, which added pressure to the situation they were in. Chris Watts chose to have an affair. This added pressure to the situation he was in. The financial distress, if you think of how all of these work together, the affair has an impact on the pregnancy. The pregnancy has an impact on the affair. The financial distress has an impact on the pregnancy. The financial distress has an impact on the affair. The affair has an impact on the financial distress. Chris Watts not being able to afford to go out. He's now spending money on meals that he can't afford. He's going to the sand dunes and Bandimere Speedway, things that he shouldn't really be able to afford. One could argue Shan'ann going to Arizona was something she couldn't afford. Going anywhere, going on these trips when you're about to lose your house or your car, maybe you should be doing something else. Maybe you shouldn't be getting pregnant when you financially distressed to the extent that they were about to lose their home. I mean, where are you going to put your child when the child's born if you're about to lose your house, right? So all I'm saying is these were all preventable choices, and yet each one aggravated the next, and yet they continued making these bad choices. Everyone in this story. But Nutgate in particular is one that I mean, Nutgate is separate from the pregnancy and the affair and the financial distress, and that is a drama that was manufactured. Nutgate wasn't inevitable; it was also a choice, and Nutgate was still going on more than a month later. It wasn't as though Nutgate happened on July 9th and then it disappeared. Nutgate was still ever present when Watts arrived in North Carolina on July 31st, and he never went to see his folks until August 6th because of Nutgate. And when he went there, that was what they spoke about. So Nutgate was sort of a huge drama that wasn't choosing to be, a drama-free life. It was an explosion of resentment that preceded the annihilation, and it was, in my view, unnecessary. Whatever its connection to the murders, it didn't help anyone. It added to a sense of emotional compromise. If you go through the timeline and just imagine Shan'ann in North Carolina with Chris Watts, and you take Nutgate away, Nutgate was sort of clouding everything else that was going on. Nutgate was preventing people from talking to each other. Nutgate was sort of a maelstrom that was sort of sweeping everyone up into it. Imagine if you take Nutgate away, what else would there be to talk about? Well, it would be Chris Watts' strange behavior. I think Shan'ann was a little bit confused that maybe he was being cool to her because of Nutgate, meanwhile to something else. And he could then manipulate her to think, yes, it was all about Nutgate, and he didn't like how she was treating his father, and she put a dagger. That may not really have been his true feelings, but it was a nice smokescreen to deceive her about what really should have been spoken about then, which was the affair. Why are you not sleeping with me? Why are you not intimate with me? Why did you barely kiss me at the airport? Well, it's not because of Nutgate, it's because I'm not in love with you anymore. And that would have been the proper conversations you have had kind of around their anniversary, which is why he went in what they were celebrating. But Nutgate sort of covered all of that over, and it was a big tornado of drama that was sort of put there, and bear in mind, you in your life, if you get caught up in like a tornado where you feel justified, you feel really angry in your response, at the same time you've got a choice at any moment to abandon it, to say, you know what, I'm very angry, I'm very emotional, I'm very invested, I'm very reactionary right now, but you know what, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to stop this drama. I'm just not going to fuel it anymore. I'm just going to let it go. Right? You have a choice to do that. You have a choice to decide how you're going to respond to any given situation. And Shan'ann had that choice. Watts also had that choice. He had the choice not to commit murder. He had the choice not to, no matter what Shan'ann was doing, no matter how he felt about Kissinger, he had the choice to say, you know what, I've got all these ways of responding to the situation, and murder should have been the absolute last resort, and probably it was in his mind. It probably was the last resort, but it shouldn't even be a resort. It should not even be one of the cards, but in his crazy mind it was for him a viable option. And I'm going to do another video of how did Watts think that the explanation of she just went to a friend would fly. Because when he came up with the scenario, he thought, well, how am I going to explain it to the outside world? Oh, well, Shan'ann just went to a friend. She got huffy, she got upset, and then she went to a friend kind of out of spite. And a lot of people believed that explanation for a short time, but it really didn't fly. And so I want to just talk about why he thought it might. So I'm not saying committing triple murder was any kind of practical workable solution. I'm saying in the same way that Nutgate was a really bad choice, a really bad reaction, well, so was committing triple murder. It was a very, very bad reaction to a complicated situation, but it's trying to find a simple solution, but it's cutting it very roughly, isn't it? In the same way, Nutgate was cutting off people in a very rough way for what may have been a innocent mistake, but even if it wasn't an innocent mistake, I think people can agree there was a better way of handling it than trying not to see someone again ever again. Asking your husband not to ever see his parents again or whatever, writing them off. I don't like the way that this is being expressed, because it sounds like it's attacking Shan'ann, but what I'm trying to get at is this whole idea of drama. Drama can aggravate a situation, and just to come back to what I said earlier, everyone in this story created more drama for themselves when the tea leaves were clearly showing that there was a heck of a lot of drama going on. And I think what hid the drama away was, for example, the Thrive thing, the whole pretending to have this lifestyle that they didn't really have. And so you kind of had two faces to it. You had the real drama that you sort of felt in your gut, and then you had the appearance of no drama, but from the other players, but you nevertheless felt it in your gut. So Kissinger may have felt, wow, I'm feeling really a lot of drama here. I don't know whether this guy loves me. I don't know if he's going to put me first. And there was actually a real reason for it, because he was pretending to be someone he was not. Shan'ann, in a way, was also not operating regarding the Watts' behavior. She was saying, she should be given a medal because she's really not responding to this in a way that she would normally do, which would be far more. She would be far more, I guess, emotional and controlling the situation. And she was really sort of giving Watts a bit of a reprieve and letting things kind of going with the flow, as she put it. And that's not how you have a drama-free life, going with the flow. You need to address something, but just not add drama to it when you're addressing it, which isn't easy. And I mean, that's the crux, is how do you try and sort something out when you don't have control over how the other person is going to respond. So in other words, you can say, it's all fair and well to say, I'm not going to have drama, I'm not going to be dramatic. But how do you know bringing up an emotional question isn't going to cause the other person to be dramatic, and there's no way of controlling that. There's no way of guaranteeing that. I mean, you only develop that kind of trust in a relationship over time, where you learn how to manage oneself, and as a couple you learn to develop a kind of resilience, and a kind of, where you can rely on each other, and you can be free to be yourself, but also know what's not good for the relationship. And so, in my opinion, the choice Watts made to commit triple murder, this alternative in inverted commas, was selected for reasons that had to do with Watts's low social prowess. If he was a more sophisticated guy, emotionally and socially, he probably would have felt the confidence to navigate something as arduous and daunting as a divorce. There's also another reason Watts chose the way he did. He chose what he considered the easy, instant option for him. Millions are programmed to do that each and every day. In the modern world, we're constantly faced with simple, convenient opportunities to deal with complex and difficult situations. MLM companies thrive on people who want to make the easy but ill-informed choice. Invariably, these simple, convenient choices don't make life simpler or more convenient. Our self-delusion and greed draws us into wanting more, but without paying the price of making a real sacrifice to get it. Wanting a drama-free life is one thing. To achieve it means when things hurt, when we want to lash out, we're able to suck it up, we're able to exert discipline and see the bigger picture, if not for others, then for ourselves. Seeing the bigger picture includes attaching real consequences to ourselves and our choices, especially those that seem to offer a quick and easy solution. There is never a quick and easy solution to complicated situations, but we can make a choice not to add unnecessary drama to already dramatic and difficult situations. That resolve and keeping to it is the first step on a road to somewhere better than we presently find ourselves. We are very quick to blame others, but other people are beyond our control. The drama-free way is not to blame ourselves, but to turn ourselves as both the source and the solution to what's wrong with our world. And that concludes this episode. Again, I want to just emphasize that this is a subjective view. This isn't dealing with forensics or evidence. And I'm simply providing my view, certainly on the psychology. And like I said, it's something that I know is very controversial. And a lot of people don't like me talking about it because they think it's an attack on Shan'ann. I think if you're honest about your own approach to drama, then I think it's actually quite a helpful conversation. But I want to leave it as an open question. I want to ask you, how do you build yourself up? And how should you? Thank you for listening.